You're listening to Boomers Today with your host, Frank Sampson.
Well, welcome to Boomers Today. I'm your host, Frank Sampson. Of course, each week we bring you important and useful information on issues facing baby boomers, their parents, and other loved ones. You know, we have a great show for you again this week, and I just really wanted to thank everybody for all their support. Our listeners are growing each and every day, and it's because of you. You know, you're sharing with family and friends, saying you should listen to Boomers Today, a lot of good information, and we really appreciate that. So many of you have, downloaded our free app on if you have an Android phone or an iPhone, you can download the free apps. Of course, we're on Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, their show, and many other online shows. And of course, you could go to boomerstodayradio.com to listen as well. So the reason we're getting so many listeners is because we've got wonderful guests, and today's going to be no different. We have with us Holly Simpson, who is an experienced estate planning and elder law attorney. She's covers both North and South Carolina, but will certainly talk to us about elder law around the country. Prior to obtaining her law degree, she was a licensed family therapist and helped hundreds of families navigate various life difficulties. Holly graduated at the top of her law school class while juggling the demands of her 6 children. She started Simpson Law Firm because she wanted to continue helping families by creating plans to protect their assets and their loved ones. Holly, thank you so much for joining us on Boomers Today. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, Frank, so happy to be here.
Yeah, great to have you. Great to have you. Well, you got a great background. You're a licensed family therapist and an elder law attorney. So we're going to learn a lot from you today. So I'm really looking forward to it.
Well, thank you. I thought you were going to comment on the 6 children. A lot of folks comment on that because that's kind of unique.
That for sure. that for sure. I mean,
truthfully, that's been the hardest job, right? Is the 6 children. But
yeah, I'm the youngest of 4 children, and I've always called my mother a saint. You're doing it with 6 and a career.
I'm not a saint, but coming to practice law is the easy part of my life. How's that?
Great. Well, let's talk about that, because certainly, what you do, I think we want to help educate people about what you do and some of your peers around the country do, because it's such an important part of law. And so when we talk about elder law or an elder law attorney, what should people understand that is? What does an elder law attorney do versus other attorneys?
Yeah, thanks, Frank. So an elder law attorney is someone who specializes in estate planning for people who are over 65. And we say we help people to prepare to protect their assets and to prepare for the possibility of paying for long-term care. And I feel like my job is to help educate people to stay in control of their money and property for the rest of their lives and to help them protect their assets as they age. Preparing an estate plan for someone who's over 65 is a lot different than preparing an estate plan for, say, a family with young children. There's certainly very important things that need to be in place when you have young children, and naming guardians and putting the assets in a trust so that those assets can be managed for your children. But it looks very different when you're 65 and your children are raised and they're adults and you're looking forward to the rest of your life and starting to contemplate, oh, wow, maybe there is the possibility that myself or my spouse, if I'm married, could be sick and could require long-term care down the road. And elder law planning is kind of fun because there's they're not secrets, but they're kind of unknown things out there that can just this little bit of knowledge can really help people stretch their assets and not have to spend down all of their assets in order to pay for their long-term care and, really kind of get to plan for how they want to live at the end of their life.
Yeah, because as we both know, it can be pretty expensive. When I say expensive, I'm not talking for the attorney. It could be expensive for care. That's
Right. Yeah. I know I'm here in South and North Carolina. I'm on the border of South and North Carolina, so I practice in both states. But around here, the average cost is around 8,000, and I know that's pretty low actually for the country in general. My partner here, she's from Massachusetts, and I know up there the average care was 12,000 a month. So it
yeah.
vary greatly across the country, and that can whittle down your life savings very quickly.
Yeah, and I'm sure that I know that those numbers that you're throwing out there, certainly I know they're accurate depending on the situation. It depends if you're in skilled nursing. It depends if you're in assisted living. It depends if you're getting care at home. So that could be a wide range, of course.
Oh
So
yeah, absolutely,
right,
absolutely.
right. So let's talk about something that subject matter that I think uh, confuse many, and I could understand why, because it's all we're talking about a lot of government programs, and for whatever reason, sometimes the government makes them confusing. So, and that's Medicare and Medicaid. And now Medicaid, I know you're in North and South Carolina. That term is sometimes a different term depending upon the state you're in. Like I'm in California, it's called medi-cal. I know that in Arizona, it's called something else, but generally speaking, it's the same concept. But maybe you could give us just a simple version as possible on how you would explain to your clients if they said, well, tell me, what's the difference between Medicare and Medicaid?
Yeah, absolutely. We get that asked that question all the time. And a lot of folks, even when they're on Medicare, so Medicare is the government insurance program for people who are over 65, and almost anyone is eligible if you're a citizen. And then you also will have maybe a little bit of a premium for a supplement with that. And so I have a lot of folks that are on Medicare, and that's the program that covers, for health care, like I said, for if you're over 65. They're on Medicare and they've heard of Medicaid, and they use those terms interchangeably, and they're actually different programs. And Medicaid is also a government insurance program, but Medicaid is one that you qualify for based on the amount of assets you have and based on your income. And so a lot of folks get those two confused. The one difference is that Medicare itself does not pay for a nursing home for very long. And so nursing homes under Medicare, they'll pay for the first 20 days. They got you covered. But after that, you've got to copay for, I think it's $175 for the next 80 days. And then after that 100 days, Medicare will no longer cover your stay in the nursing home. Remember, Medicare is the program that most people over 65 have that cover their health care. So after 100 days, you're left to either pay for it out of pocket, hope that you were wise enough to buy a long-term care insurance policy while they were affordable and before you had too many birthdays that make the premiums go up. Like I said, or you're paying out of pocket, which can be very costly really quickly. Medicaid, on the other hand, that's the program we said you qualify based on your assets and your income. That program will actually pay for a nursing home at 100%. And a lot of folks don't realize that there's some great legal tools we can use to make it so that your assets and income are such that you could qualify for Medicaid. So that's kind of the fun part of my job, is kind of turning on the light bulb a little bit for people and letting them know that, hey, you know what? You thought maybe you didn't qualify for Medicaid because you owned a car and a house, but guess what? We've got some legal tools. We can help you get qualified and then help you get some help paying for that nursing home as you need it.
So let me ask you this. I get to ask this, as you know, I'm, in the industry, not an attorney, but I'm in the industry. And I get these questions all the time too. I'm going to tell you what I say to people, and you tell me if you agree from a legal standpoint, if I'm explaining it right. So Medicare, the way I've explained it is it's kind of like your, health insurance that you would have if you had through your company or through some other group plan. But in this case, it's being provided by the federal government if you've earned it, when you turn the age of 65. Okay.
Yep, love it.
Okay. And Medicaid, I define as that's more like long-term care insurance. However, that's paid for by the federal and state government together, and it only covers what is considered health care. So nursing falls into health care, but assisted living, depending on a state by state, doesn't fall into health care. Is that what do you think about that?
Well, actually, in some states, Medicaid does cover
Right,
some
that's what I'm saying. It
living
depends.
expenses.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's what I'm saying. It depends state by state.
Yeah, it's very state specific.
Yeah,
And
but
I know here in,
Medicare, yeah, because it's being funded by both the federal and state governments, right?
yeah, absolutely. So the state governments make their own rules about what Medicaid covers.
Exactly,
And
exactly.
sometimes that's assisted living. And also, I know in South Carolina, they provide a really great home care service. So if there's home health, Medicaid
Right,
will help cover
right.
some of that. So,
So that's why people in understanding Medicaid, they need to learn what their particular state,
right, it's very state specific. And if you just Google about Medicaid, you probably aren't going to come up with great information because it's going to be about your state, because a lot of it will be federal information. And also, the thing to remember about Medicaid laws is they change a lot, but state to state, especially. And even within the state, Medicaid laws are updated a couple times a year here, and the numbers change. So it's important that you don't always just take what you get off of a Google search about Medicaid in your state. Really talk to someone who does it every day, someone who specializes in elder law, because they're going to be up on the latest laws and the latest numbers and the latest asset limits and what can be counted against you and counted for you. Because I know, the laws change around this pretty rapidly, actually.
Yeah. So I think there's a perception out there by many that Medicaid is really for people who are very poor and are totally out of money. And either they're going to be living in the street if they need care, but the federal government kicks in and says, no, if you need care and you're out of money, you can then stay in a nursing home if that's the type of care you need. But that's not the case. It is maybe the intention, I think, was for people who are out of money and need care. However, at least that's the perception. That's not necessarily the case, is it?
Right, you're exactly right about that. And I think probably one of the number one calls we get, and a client I had yesterday afternoon, actually, they came in and the spouse, she had Parkinson's, and it was, she was concerned that she might need long-term care insurance soon, or long-term care soon. And this couple was all ready to sell their house and their car because they had heard that you can't have anything in order to qualify for Medicaid. You can't have a house, you can't have a car, you've got to be really poor. They're trying to give away some of their assets to their children. And fortunately, they came into my office before they did that because it's just not true. You can keep your car, I think all jurisdictions. You can keep your house, whether you're single or married in most jurisdictions. So you can keep some assets in your name. And in fact, if you try to get those assets out of your name, thinking you don't have to have anything before you can qualify for Medicaid, sometimes you might cause some problems when you do go to apply for Medicaid, because you're going to get penalized for giving that car away or giving that house away, because Medicaid will look at that as a gift and they could go back and say, oh, you're not going to be qualified for an extra year or so. Yeah.
Right. There's that, what's called maybe that look back period. Maybe explain that look back.
Right. Yeah. So in general, Medicaid is going to look, in most states, they're going to look at your assets that you've had for the last 5 years. And anything that you give away in that 5 years that's over, maybe $500, they're going to ask you to account for that. And because in the eyes of Medicaid, if you had money that you could give away, then you could have used that money for your care. And so they're going to penalize you if you've given stuff away within the last 5 years. And they don't like that. And by penalize, meaning, you may not be eligible for Medicaid for a few more months than you would have wanted, because they said, oh, you had some money that you gave away, you got a 6-month penalty. Now you're going to have to pay for your own care for that 6 months.
Got it. So Holly, we're going to take just a real quick break real quick, I promise, just to recognize our sponsor. When we come back, we're going to talk about your recommendation on how people can protect their assets while getting on Medicaid. All right, we'll come back
Okay.
in just a second. That's an important one. So I want to remind everybody that today's show is sponsored by Senior Care Authority, an elder care consulting organization that has a national network of professionally trained and experienced local advisors to assist families in determining the right path for your loved ones. They'll discuss various long-term care options, whether it's in-home care, assisted living, memory care, or if you just need an advocate to get some advice from a local Senior Care Authority advisor can help you now. So for a free 30-minute consultation with an advisor in your area, contact Senior Care Authority at 888-809-1231, or you could go directly to their website at www.seniorcareauthority.com, and you could find an advisor in your area. So we're back on Boomers Today with Holly Simpson, who is an estate planning and elder law attorney. And Holly, so we're talking about Medicare, Medicaid. So let me ask you the question. So if somebody does have assets, the senior, home, car, maybe they've got even a lot of money in the bank, okay? Or they have retirement and all that. Is there a way to protect those assets while still getting on Medicaid? Because that could be very expensive. You could go through somebody's assets pretty quick. We were talking about how expensive, nursing could be.
Yeah, absolutely. There's some really cool, exciting tools that are out there to help you to protect some of your assets so that you don't have to spend all of your money that you've worked so hard and saved your whole life for, just to see it paid away down to the nursing home. Ideally, the further ahead you plan, the more of your money you could save. So we talked before the break about a 5-year look back. So if you can create what we call an irrevocable trust, and you can do that 5 years before you ever need Medicaid, anything that's in that trust 5 years ahead of time, the government is not going to look at that as if that is your asset, because you don't technically own it anymore. The government, your irrevocable trust owns that asset. And so it's not yours. And so we can shield a lot of assets inside of that irrevocable trust. We can shield things like your house, stocks, security accounts, savings accounts. One thing that we generally never put inside an irrevocable trust is an IRA or, your 401k. And I know for a lot of Americans, that's one of their biggest assets. You got your house and your 401k. However, just because you've got a large amount in your 401k or IRA that's sitting there does not necessarily mean that you're not going to be able to qualify for Medicaid. In a lot of states, they do not count that IRA against you as an asset. So, say you've got a couple $100,000 sitting in an IRA. I know in North and South Carolina, they don't look at that as if that's your asset. They count that as income against you whenever you start taking out the required minimum distributions. So as long as you're taking out your required minimum distributions, Medicaid's going to look at that and say, oh, that's not an asset, but we will count that income against them. But like we talked about before, Medicaid's a program that looks at your assets and your income. And so there's also tools we have to make sure your income doesn't look like it's too high. There's other kinds of trusts, commonly called a Miller trust. So if your income's above that threshold that Medicaid says you can make, and I'd say a ballpark figure across the country is probably around $2,300 a month is probably about average what Medicaid says you can have as income. And if your income is over that, we can create a special Miller trust that can hold some of your excess income and still allow you to be qualified for Medicaid. And income for most people is going to look like Social Security. It's going to look like those required minimum distributions. Income might also be just interest you make off your investments. It could be annuities that are paid out to you. All of those things will count as income against you. But a lot of states will allow you to use that Miller trust so that your income looks more like it's under that $2,400 per month range.
So let's say there's a senior. The senior's, in his or her 80s. Health-wise, they've got their issues, but nothing major going on. But we know the statistics. Probably that person has a high percentage of probably going to need some sort of care in the future, whether it's the following year or 5 years from that at that point or whatever.
Right.
So people don't necessarily think that, hey, maybe my mother or my father or myself, if you're talking about yourself, should get on Medicaid. And so how do you kind of plan 5 years in advance? I mean, do
Yeah, if
people,
you're
usually
yes.
once you say the trigger is that, oh, my mother or my father are having a lot of challenges, or they've been diagnosed with a dementia diagnosis, or they recently had a stroke, and we got to protect their assets. Is that going to be too late?
No, 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 absolutely not. And I started with irrevocable trust because it's in 5 year ahead planning, because it's always easier to plan ahead and not procrastinate. And when you plan ahead 5 years, we can save, nearly 100% of your assets a lot of the time. And I think of my kids, I've got a kid, a college kid right now, and he's doing some online classes, and his deadline is midnight on Saturday, which is funny. I know when I was in college, you didn't have that option, right? You turn in your papers during the day on a Friday or whatever. But
Right.
so he's always at the wire Saturday night at 11:50, stressed and pounding out and pulling out some C+ effort for that paper, getting it in by midnight. And the same is true with Medicaid planning. We can create a great plan 5 years ahead because we got a lot of time. It's not going to be as stressful. It's going to be a lot cheaper 5 years ahead. But we can also create a plan when you're at the wire at the last minute, even if, you've got mom's already in the nursing home, or mom's going to be in the nursing home the next year or so. The trick is we just can't save as many of your assets when it's closer like that. There are some things you can still do, and in different states, those strategies will vary. I know here in the Carolinas, there are things we can do with your home to transfer that ownership a little bit, so that doesn't become a problem for you. And I'll talk about that in a minute. But another popular thing we can do is, they're called Medicaid compliant annuities. And we can teach you about, how you can use your assets to purchase a Medicaid compliant annuity, and how Medicaid generally doesn't count that against you. And that helps to preserve some of your assets as well. So there are definitely some things. We call that crisis planning. So kind of like my kid up late at night, it's a crisis to get his paper done.
Right.
It's a crisis. You're crisis planning because mom's already in the nursing home. But it's a myth that you have to always plan 5 years ahead if you're trying to get on Medicaid.
Gotcha.
And I brought up the house, moving the house around, because we get asked that question so often. And, we've talked earlier about you can keep your house and get on Medicaid. But what happens, I think the reason why that myth got started, and it's just a misunderstanding. What happens, you can keep that house while you're alive, and Medicaid won't count that against you. But when you pass away, that house is still there, and Medicaid can come and put a lien on that house in your estate to try to recoup all of the money that they paid for your care. So, if Medicaid paid out $100,000 for your care while you're in the nursing home, after your death, they're going to come back to your house, lien that house, and, the estate will have to pay out the $100,000. But there's a lot of great legal tools that we can use to help avoid that estate recovery, so that that you can pass that house to your loved ones. Or maybe it's a house that's been in the family for a couple generations and you want to keep it that way. There's lots of tools we can do around that.
I think if we accomplish anything in our discussion today, is to advise people, don't try to do this yourself. Don't make any decisions yourself as it relates to moving money around or moving things in other people's names. Don't do that, right?
Right.
Don't do that.
Yeah, there's, that moving the house comes up a lot. A lot of people think, well, just be cheaper, be a great estate plan to just move the house into my son's name, before I pass away.
So I have one more question, but before we get to the question, because we only have a couple minutes left here.
So fast.
I want you to, share with everybody, how they could get a hold of you should they, want to learn more about your firm and any help that you might be able to provide. And also maybe share with them, if they are not in North or South Carolina, how they could get advice from that standpoint. So I'll let you take that away, and then I'll give you my final question.
Thank you, Frank. Yeah, so my name is Holly Simpson, and I'm the owner of Simpson Law Firm, and we're here in North and South Carolina. And probably the best way to get a hold of us would be our website, and that is hollysimpsonlawfirm.com, and it's Holly, Holly, Simpson, Simpson, lawfirm.com. And we help lots of families here in the North and South Carolina areas. But that being said, we're also connected with a network of nationwide elder law attorneys. And we go to events together and we get on listservs together and help each other out. And so if there's anyone outside of the Carolinas that's looking for someone who's really specialized in elder law, really would know what they're talking about, feel free to contact us on the website. Also, you could call us on our phone number. It's 803-764-9555. And we'd be happy to introduce you to some really great qualified elder law attorneys throughout the country.
Great. Thank you for that. So with our minute and a half left here, just somebody who is listening to this, where should they begin? Where should they start if they're going, wow, I should really start planning for mom or dad, or I should start planning for myself, or whatever the case may be? What do you recommend? Where do they begin? I
would recommend finding a good, experienced elder law or estate planning attorney in your area. If you're not, if you're under 65, find someone that specializes in estate planning. You don't want someone that does, is in the DUI court on Monday, but on Wednesday they do estate planning, because there's a lot of intricacies around estate planning and especially around elder law. So you really want to find someone that's experienced in that area. And when you contact that person, I know for our clients, when they call us, we send out a questionnaire and it just has you write down all of your assets to just, to start to organize what you have so you know how to plan for that. And then once you have that, you can bring that to the appointment and get some really good solid advice about how best to protect those assets.
Great. Holly Simpson, check it out, hollysimpsonlawfirm.com. Thank you so much for joining us on Boomers Today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Frank. That was fun.
Yeah, it was great. Yeah, and I want to thank everybody for joining us on Boomers Today. Please be safe out there. And we'll talk to everybody real soon. Thank you so much.
You've been listening to Boomers Today with Frank Sampson. To learn more about today's show, visit boomerstodayradio.com and join us next time for another edition of Boomers Today.